All right, guys, we're back on the Next Level Agents podcast and got a returning guest, longtime friend, Mr. Ronnie Doss. I almost used the other name that we used a minute ago, but I'm going to go with Ronnie Doss because that is your actual, that's your legal name, right?
That is my legal name, and it's Junior. My dad's a Ronnie, so I'm Junior. It's official. It is absolutely official.
Ronnie Doss Jr. I like that.
Yeah.
Man, it's been a few years. I was thinking about this. Had you on the podcast before? Certainly a lot of people that I know, especially if you've been to any of the events that Fred and I have done in person. You might have seen Ronnie, heard him talk from stage, whether that be at NLA Live or one of our smaller events here locally, where it's a little more intimate. So I'm sure that not all the listeners here, or I should say a good majority of these listeners today will probably have some context of you, but maybe not everyone. So why don't we start with Ron, give us the elevator speech. Like, what does Ronnie Doss do? Who are you?
So help people navigate transition and change in their business, family. Started out speaking on platform in almost, let's see, 16 years ago in a church. And that grew up in church, loved that, spoke at a church, got invited to go to a leadership development seminar, fell in love with that type of information, psychology, human behavior, did that. And then I took off in that direction. And initially, before I was speaking, I had a real estate company. That was my background, finance. Enjoyed that, loved that. And then just decided to give the speaking thing a try, and did. And one door opened, led to another door opening, and now have spoken to some huge companies. I consult with a lot of big companies, a lot of small business people, speak at different conferences, and it's become, now, Kevin, I don't know what I would do any different. It's become such a part of me that it's really who I am. And so I have clients that I work with who have a few employees. I have clients that I work with that have hundreds of employees, and I speak at events for companies that have thousands and thousands of employees. And it's been an incredible journey, and working with people. When I first started, I thought I'd just be on a platform. Like, okay, this is what it's going to look like. I'll be on a platform. I'll speak at events. And then when people heard the content, what it was I was sharing, they started asking me if I would start working with them or their team via Zoom or Google Hangout or Microsoft Teams or whatever. And I started doing that, and then like shifting in with COVID, so many people went to Zoom, so many people went to doing the digital thing, that now that's what I do so much of, and it takes up a majority of my time. I go out, I'll leave tomorrow. I'll fly to Florida. I'm speaking at an event this Friday, and then I have a mastermind that I'll be doing this weekend. But I take my family with me. They go a lot of places, and it's been a neat career, a neat path. I love what I do, and so it's not that it doesn't feel like work. You know how that is. You got to work, but I'm really, really grateful that it's what I have moved into, and now it's really what I do all the time. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome. I think this would be a fun place to start. Right before I got to my office and you and I started this recording, Fred and I were speaking at an event, and the subject matter of our talk was in regards to embracing change.
Mm-hmm.
You and I were talking about this earlier this week. There are a lot of changes going on in the real estate industry, a lot of turbulence, I think might be the right word. And I think Fred said now this is the third time that he shared this week alone. And it's what, Wednesday? You and I are recording this on a Wednesday, but he shared the formula. And I'm just going to say it, and then I want to hear your response to it and what it means to you. And the
Okay.
thing we've found ourselves sharing for the third time this week today is intention plus mechanism equals results. Ronnie, when I say those words to you, intention plus mechanism equals results, comes to mind.
That I'll go with the flow of it. Every single result that we produce has an intention to go with it. So you take that whole idea, intention plus mechanism equals results, and you reverse engineer it and you back it out. And so if you want to look at what you produce, you have to say, this is a result. There must have been some intention that aligns with that got me to this place. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't circumstances that will happen. There's natural events. There are changes in seasons. There are changes in industry. Those things are going to happen. Those are circumstantial. But at the end of the day, that formula, Kevin, simply means that if there's a result that I am producing myself, there must be some part of me, something inside of me that has contributed to that, that has led to that outcome. And what that formula does is it gives us a chance, not out of blame or not out of a place of beating ourselves up. It's not that you can't, critique yourself. I tell people, don't, critique yourself, try not to criticize yourself, but not from a place of blame or a place of shaming yourself, but really from a place of responsibility of going, okay, if over time, this is a result that is being produced, there must have been some part of me that was intent in making that happen or committed to making that happen. And whether that's an income level or whether that's a level of how you would measure your relationship or how you measure your own physical health or how you measure how you interact with your kids, your team, there's a result that's being produced. And results are feedback for you. And if you look at that formula, you take the feedback and then go, okay, well, what must I have been intent or committed to that produced that? And that gives a person, in using that formula, the chance to say, okay, if this is a result I'm producing, and this is what I've been committed to, if I can shift what I am committed to, then ultimately that is based on that type of formula and that approach. If I can shift my commitment, then that's going to shift a result somewhere in the future. And so if I decide that there's a result that I want in the future, 90 days out or 9 years out, whatever that result is that I would say that I hope for, that formula gives me a chance to say, okay, if that's what I want to produce, what do I need to be committed to right now? And that means, what can I be committed to, not just for the day? You can say, what am I committed to for this afternoon? What am I committed to for this hour? What am I committed to for this one conversation? What am I really committed to bringing to this? And then that gives you a chance to really be more, what I would say is clear and concise on how you want to show up. And in your showing up with that movement, that motivation, that mindset, that's what then builds momentum. And momentum is what takes you through these transitions that every industry is going to deal with. The momentum breaks you through it. It's hard to break through anything without some momentum, but you don't get momentum without movement. And you don't typically have movement, not positive movement, without a positive intentional mindset. And so all these things go together and they fuel one another. And I believe, and I think you would absolutely agree, I don't even need to say that, but that over time, time will tell what we've really been committed to. Now, some people could say, well, I was committed to success and doing it right, but then circumstances changed. Great. Up until this point, you were committed to success and it looking a certain way. But now, if you look at things changing and realize that life is changing, seasons are changing, industries are changing, right? Economies are changing, then you have a chance to say, with all those things changing, what is it that I'm going to be committed to and what will I be about? What will I bring to the game today? And that's all you can do. And once you learn to take the day on, then the day becomes a week, the week then builds into a month. And then you look up as quickly as time passes and you can look back and go, man, we've gained some ground. When other people that were operating more from what I would say is an entitlement, not a commitment thing, a true entitlement mentality, is people that are entitled expect it. People just expect stuff to come. When you look at commitment and intention, what you're not doing is you're not just expecting it. What you're doing is you are working towards it. You can hope for it, but you're doing much more than just having it in your mind of like, oh yeah, maybe this is going to come to me. Commitment and entitlement. You can be committed to entitlement, but I think for the context of this is intention and commitment. They over time it separates people, and you find out who's really going to be about whatever the thing is that they said they're going to be about. There's a lot of talkers, there's a lot of posers, and you're either in it or you're not. And I'll say this last thing because I told this to a team today. You can be in the room, Kevin, and still not be all in. People think that just because you're in the room, it means you're all in. Not true. You could be in the room because you didn't have crap else to do. But when you're all in, you're in the chair and you're bringing everything that you can bring to that table, to that meeting, to that conversation, so that the result gets better in the future for not only you, but whoever you're in the room with that you're, I would say, hoping to serve, hoping to work alongside, and hoping to call your team. So there's that.
That's that's a good little question to start with. You know, I love that you say that, man. I would think too, you could be in the room out of compliance, and out of self-perceived peer pressure. I'll give you an example, real life example that's going on right now in mine and Fred's business. Well, our team is doing a 60-day challenge. Started July 1st and it ends next week. And it's about making a certain number of phone calls or doing a certain number of open houses in this 60-day time frame. And we got this group of people that all said, "Hey, I'm in. I want to do it. I'm making this promise, this commitment to do this number of phone calls, or, you know, it's 5,000 phone calls or 50 open houses in the 62-day period of July and August." And there are some of the agents that are committed and all in, and there are definitely some that I believe raise their hand out of compliance or a need to fit in. And that's, I always find that interesting too, to go, hey, you could be in the, sometimes I feel like what would be an easy thing for me to do is to show up, be in the room so I can kind of say that I'm doing what you told me to, Ronnie, even though I'm not actually, like, I'm not all in, so I'm probably not going to get the result that I'm actually after. But I can say I did it because I did show up.
Yeah, dude, I got 10,000 things to say on that. I think the first part of that is when you look at how something appears versus how something actually works. So when we talk about people that say, "Oh, they raise their hand," or when let's say we've all done it before. "Oh yeah, I'll do this because, you know, yes, it's the thing to do." It looks, you know, it's an ego thing to go, "Okay, look, I want this to appear like I'm committed. This is how it appears on the surface." How things look on the surface and how well they actually work are very, very different things. You know, it's like your ego, like how you want to appear, how you want to fit in. All of those things are part of being human. Everybody wants to be a part of something, and there's nothing wrong with being a part of something. We all need to be included in something. But just because you're included doesn't mean that you're intentional. Like, you can be a part of the group sitting at the table. There's a phrase I've always said is that if you keep wanting to get invited to the table, you've got to be willing to bring something good to the table. And when people think about the table, they think about, Kevin, they think about eating a good meal. Everybody wants a good meal, but nobody wants to pay attention to the ingredients. And so everybody wants to be able to be included in something, raise their hand and say, "Oh yeah, this is something, yeah, I'll do it." But it's really not what they're about. And when you're about it, you work it. You work it when nobody's looking. You work it when the phone ain't ringing. You work it when you can take, when you have the least little bit of any motivation at all, you find it deep inside of you, and you maximize that with a little. You do whatever it takes. And I think a lot of times what can happen is when people raise their hand and they get included into the group, and it's fun because there's a whole lot of, like, you know, kind of camaraderie, and there's a whole lot of high fiving and, "Oh yeah, you're here." At the end of the day, it's not that you just came into the room and sat at the table. It's not enough. It's not what you sitting at the table. It's what you stand for when it comes to relation to that table that you want to sit at. And what you stand for is what you stand for when nobody else is looking to see if you stand for it. Do you stand for serving a potential client, a potential person, when maybe they can't pay you, when maybe they're going through a tough time? Can you still stand for a friend? It's one of the things that I've said many times. When you have money, your friends know you. When you have no money, you know your friends. It can go the same way with resources. It can go the same way. It's like you'll find out what's real when the rubber hits the road, when things get tough. And that's where you get to look at yourself as an individual and say, am I just raising my hand to just come and try and fit in and hang out? Or am I really here to bring something to this place that I'm saying that I'm being invited into? The invite is not enough. You know, you've heard me say this. You've probably heard a lot of people say it, but I know I've said it many times. It's like the talent gets you in the door, right? But it's the consistency, it's the character, it's the commitment, it's the grind of it. It's that keeps you there, you know. And there's a lot of talent out there. You can take a talented person, put them in any industry, and they do okay. But when you want somebody that really is like about it, it takes a lot more than talent. Like talent over time goes away. You know, the talent you get more, you develop your talent, but in the beginning, just because you got in the room, you can get attention. But if you aren't willing to grind it, work it, and really do what other people want, it becomes the wrong kind of attention. And when it comes to teams, I've walked in rooms before, to your point, where people are just sitting in that room. And the reason they're in that room is because their team lead, the company's required it. Like someone's made them do it. And that's a very different energy than someone who's sitting there going, yeah, let's take this and let's run with it. Let's do whatever it takes to make this happen. And when I work with a business or a team, that's the conversation that I'm having with the team lead. It's like, if you want your team to show up and be committed, you have to be committed. Don't ask someone that's following you to do something that you yourself aren't willing to do. And that's the difference between really being committed to something or just showing up being compliant. And, you know, compliance easy, right? And the challenge with compliant, and then I'll be done and we can flow on to the next question. The problem with compliant is that you get to wind up blaming someone. And so like what happens is if I'm compliant, I go, it's because they made me. And then when no result is produced that's positive, then I get to blame them because they made me show up. But if I'm really committed and I go, oh, no, I'm producing this result. So when I get in that room, something's happening. Then you don't get to operate from blame. You get to operate and go, hey, what are we creating together? What can I count on you for? What can you count on me for? That congruency as a team and that commitment is way different. It doesn't even go in the same ballpark as people that are just operating out of compliance. In the corporate world, there's tons of compliance. People clock in, you know, they're getting their direct deposit, they're getting paid, but they're not bringing anything to the table that is really any more valuable than another warm body that would sit at that table or come to that room. And that happens. And, you know, and seeing it, it's pretty easy to discern over time who's going to be about it, who is about it. And the old saying, cream rises to the top. You know, it winds up over time. Time will tell. And that's what I think anybody that's in business needs to look at themselves and say, okay, over time, am I getting better? Am I bringing more value? Or am I just operating from a place of entitlement, compliance, showing up and just kind of riding the wave of the work everybody else is doing? Because you don't get to grow just because other people are eating. That's a very entitled, narcissistic approach. So there you go. That's all I got. That's all I have for this afternoon. And I got a new book, by the way. It's called. That was it. That was my shameless plug for my book.
Show it. Put it back up. Colossal Considerations.
Yeah, Colossal Considerations. It's new. I've had it out a couple months now, but it's 101 just kind of, I said, thought-provoking insights that were kind of, you just pick it up, read one for the day, chew on it for the day, and show up assimilating the principle or that idea into the day. And it helps the person to refine their commitment. But yeah, Colossal Considerations.
Awesome.
Available on Amazon.
That's where we go. Amazon.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. We all visit Amazon 2 or 3 times a day anyway. So while we're there, might as well.
But since you're getting boxes in your driveway, it might as well be a box from me.
I agree. Might as well.
Might as well.
You said something a few minutes ago when we were talking after the first question I asked. You talked about being able to critique yourself, not criticize. And it reminded me of something another friend taught me, which is, he said we've got to learn to observe and not judge. Like whether we're talking about looking at our own results and behavior, or say somebody else on our team. Like there's a big difference between judging results and behavior versus just observing what they are. Um,
Mhm.
and so when you said critique or criticize, you could, good idea to critique, probably not a great idea to criticize yourself. Um,
Mhm.
that just kind of hit home to me. I don't know if that brings any other thoughts to the surface for you, but I wanted to share that.
Yeah, for sure. So if in a person's mind that when they critique themselves, it has to come from this place of criticism. Or if in a person's mind that if I get critiqued by someone that I'd say is a trusted friend, someone, or if there's some feedback, if in my mind the critique means criticism, or that's all I know, let's back off this. If a person grew up and anytime they did something wrong, they were criticized, there was, now what everybody, I see so much of this and I find it interesting. I find it sad in a way, is everybody talks about, my trauma, my childhood trauma, these traumas, like everybody had traumas, like everybody's going through stuff, right? Like there's, everybody went through it. But if as a kid, a person, anytime there was a critique or feedback or any type of feedback towards what someone could have done better, if it came with this emotional, like negative force of tension, what happens is people start to think that, oh my God, I have to avoid conflict in any way. And I don't want to look at what could be real. And so here's what happens, Kevin: inattentiveness. When a person's inattentive to the result that's being produced because they're afraid of looking at the result, inattentiveness creates gaps that other people on the team or people that rely on them fall into. And so inattentiveness creates this space where people trip and fall into it. And so if I'm not attentive to things that I'm doing because I'm so afraid of doing it wrong, so I don't stretch myself, I won't set a big goal because I know that, man, if I set a big goal and I tell anybody it's a big goal and then I screw it up, I'm going to be criticized. And criticized means a whole bunch of a butt kicking, a whole bunch of getting your tail chewed out, a whole lot of what some people might say is mental or emotional abuse that happened when they were a kid. People avoid being attentive. And so that it's this complacent approach to life because they're avoiding conflict. And the truth is for us all to grow, we have to be willing to look at what's happening, be honest with ourselves about what's happening, and know that if I am inattentive to what's happening over time, I'll give you the spiritual thing. I'm not trying to take this, but it's like God doesn't make you, let's say, or the universe, whatever word the person wants to use. I'm a Christian. I say that, but God doesn't make you choose anything. The universe doesn't make you choose, but there are universal consequences to choice. And so those are there. And so inattentiveness creates some consequence that ourselves can fall into, the people that, that rely on us can fall into, our team can fall into. And so I don't think that it's bad to live in a place of critique. I think maybe it's best that you do critique you, and critiquing yourself based on how other people have critiqued them and what's right for them, I don't think is the proper or best way to do it either. You can get so many sound bites from so many people that say this is the way to do it. But what I have found for me, if I would say in a spiritual light or a universal light, being spirit led, I have to say to myself, what feels right for me? When I know that, knowing when I'm in that, being true to that, it may not align with what somebody else's truth, so to speak, is. But when it comes to what I'm producing that other people are going to deal with, the consequences of that, then absolutely, I need to critique myself, and I need somebody around me to help me to critique myself, not criticize me, but to say, hey, you thought about doing that? You thought of looking at it that way? And you have to be true to you, but critique doesn't mean criticism. You know, you can take feedback without feeling like you have to beat yourself to death. And that, you know, and that's, I think for a lot of people, Kevin, in my world, that's a tough thing for some of us to get, because we are oftentimes very hard on ourselves. I think anybody that you know that you could say, people you've learned from that have been really successful, that have produced great results, they've been hard on themselves, probably harder on themselves than other people. I'm hard on myself. And at the same time, I've learned to reflect on how I've done things, ask if it's been true to me, critique from that standpoint, and make little small pivots and adjustments to where I operate with more wisdom, not just more what's intellect from what other people say is right. So that's kind of, I hope that made sense, but that's what, for me, living in a place of reflection, giving yourself some time, asking yourself the right questions. That's what a critique is, and it's okay.
Yeah, it's totally. So, it's funny. I texted a good buddy of mine this morning this this quote, because I knew, oddly enough, I knew it'd be something he would relate to and appreciate. It jumped off the page to me, and I thought about him instantly. So I texted over to him, and the quote was a James Clear quote, by the way. He just said, "It's hard to build momentum if you're dividing your attention." And my buddy Chris, who I sent that to, said, "This is the biggest thing I'm reconciling right now." He's constantly, this guy Chris, who is one of my favorite people on the planet. He is constantly, I would say, critiquing himself in the way that you just described, going, you know, what can I do to get better? Where are my holes at? Um, you know, in business, in personal life, in his relationships, you name it, in his marriage, everything. He's always sort of asking himself. In fact, yesterday we were sharing something else, and he said, you know, it's like I actually keep these in a folder, and then I pull them out during my thinking time every week, and I actually just sit and think about some of these things. And knowing him, I know it's a way he uses to help move himself forward and critique his own results and his own actions.
Yeah. If you don't do that, that's why I was saying being true to yourself. But there is a scripture in the Bible that says a double-minded man is unstable in everything that he does. And doesn't mean you're not going to question what you do. You have to question what you do. But if you live in that place of indecision, it's almost what I was saying earlier, is inattentiveness, right? Like if you don't look at what you have in front of you and go, hey, we're going to make a decision and we're going to move with this, with as much information as we have. I heard somebody say one time that if you wait till you're 100% sure, you're already too late, that you're never going to know 100%. And so with that, it's like, I don't want to be double-minded. The other part of it is then when you're saying your friend Chris is like looking at himself, it's like from the Christian standpoint, there's a story in the Bible of King David, and King David's thing was, he would always say, Lord, search my heart, like show me what's out within me, like show me, let me see that. I'm not trying to kid myself. I'm not trying to just play the game and make it look that way. It's like, Lord, search my heart, show me what's really happening for me. And I think for all of us, that if we really want to move forward, Kevin, I say I don't care. I probably need to find a better phrase, but it doesn't matter whether it's professionally in the office or it's personally at home. We got to really search our own heart and look and say, am I giving my best to this? Not perfectly, not all the time, but am I giving my best to this? And if I'm not, then what would be the thing that I could begin to do that would start moving me in that direction? My wife, Jen, today started with Addison and Kennedy doing a homeschool program. So as you know, we're in North Carolina. My mother had some health issues, and so we chose to be here for now. We're in North Carolina, close by. It's been phenomenal. But the homeschool part of it, my daughter started, and my wife Jen said, how easy it was because this homeschool program made it simple to take these small actionable steps toward learning, that it wasn't so complicated that it was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Because most of us get complicated. It's so complicated. There's so many things we consider, it shuts us down. That's what the double-minded part is. It's like, well, what if I do this? Or what if I do this? And stay in that place all the time. It's more of going, no, look, this is what I know as best as I know it. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make some decisions based on being true to what's inside of me and moving from a heart place, moving from a place of being, we'd say, spirit-led versus, just being your mind being, noisy. And there's so much information now that we can be, our minds can be so noisy. But I think our heart, so to speak, knows. I think that when we can slow ourselves down, our heart knows what we're supposed to do. We know what we should be doing. And it doesn't matter if it's in the parenting thing, it doesn't matter if it's in the team thing. We know how we can be better. And if we're not sure, slowing down and doing a little bit of that slow reflection and critique of self, man, things come to light that it's almost like, hey, here's some fundamental things to start doing. And if you'll do these consistently, then you're going to build, back to the beginning, some momentum to move you forward. And if you make a mistake, take what you learned from it, make an adjustment, and move forward. Don't stay there too long. I've heard it like this: you use your past as a university, not a home. Use your past as a school, not a house. Don't stay there. Use it like with a tent. Don't in your past use a tent. Don't build a temple. Don't stay there forever. And if you're heart-led, spirit-led, I would say, when there's adjustments that need to be made, and you can make them confidently, and you don't have to question yourself all the time. So
it's really good.
We had a little philosophical, spiritual conversation.
You mentioned you're going to Florida, speaking at an event. Then you said you got a mastermind there too. What's that about?
Tribe Mastermind. We'll be doing that this weekend in Florida. I'll be there Saturday. We do half day Friday and all day Saturday. Business owners, guys that want to be business owners, already own businesses, have teams, got a lot of different people, different industries, but we'll be doing that there. Friday morning, I do a corporate training. But the mastermind is, it's a men's mastermind. And I've been doing that for a few years now, and it's been a labor of love. It's been an intensive thing that I've learned a ton about, working with high-level people that are making things happen. We got some great people that are doing great things. And, it's kind of like herding very successful cats. So, what I mean? It's like, don't get me wrong. It's like people say, can you herd a cat? Well, can you herd an alpha cat? That's a whole nother kind of a conversation. But we do that with the mastermind, and that's been great. And so we'll do that this weekend in Florida. So
that's not, obviously I know the answer to these questions, but I'd still want to hear it in your words. So that Tribe Mastermind, you mentioned that's a men's mastermind, and you said business. I'm assuming that's like a lot of times for those of us in real estate, like we get in masterminds and it's just a real estate. I don't want to say just, but it's like only for real estate professionals, or a lot of my friends in the mortgage world, they're in mortgage only masterminds. This is not that, right? Like this is people from all walks of life.
No, what I did is it's been really neat. I say it's neat is being able to go speak in different places and start talking about it. Having people from different types of industries in there. We have guys that are in, they're like lighting companies. We have guys that have dirt bike design companies. We have guys that are chiropractors there. We have guys that are real estate guys. We have guys that are insurance guys. We have a guy that was there the last tribe that we did a couple of months ago. He owns a funeral home, which, Kevin, let me tell you, being in the funeral home business, this guy is shedding light on life principles of being in the funeral home business for a few decades, talking about dealing with people that are having to deal with the real life issue of people passing away, oftentimes as they're older. Sometimes there are tragic events when things go on and the person's younger. He shared incredible wisdom being in that industry. It was, talking about I just sat there interviewing in front of the room, talking to him. And the look on my face, I know I had to look like, holy cow, who talks about these kind of things but it's a mix of people from different industries. And the neat part of that, as you know, is sometimes you got to get outside of your industry to learn insights around things that have nothing to do with how you do things. But that mastermind is a mix of all sorts of people from various backgrounds, and it's fantastic. It's been a lot of fun, and I've gotten to go to a lot of cool places. We've held it in different places, but we'll be in Florida this weekend.
Awesome. Where is there like a website for that? If someone wants to learn about it?
Yep. You actually just, I would tell anybody, email me if they're interested in that. You can email me directly. We got a vetting kind of process, some questionnaire, but it's ronniedoss@me.com. They can email me directly if they're interested in it. And we'll find out if it's a fit. It's still an intimate gathering. There's usually 15 to 20 of us. And we kind of want to know who's in the room, and so I like to kind of vet that a bit. It being an intimate group, sometimes there have been people that have shown up by referral that get there and they think, oh, this is going to be shooting ducks in a barrel. These are all business guys. And so I can come in and I'm trying to work the room. And the purpose of that mastermind was that we help each other to develop our skills as dads, as husbands, as leaders in our business with our team. And I didn't want it to be about money. I didn't want it to be, it's not that that's not a part of it. There are some business relationships that have come out of it. But there's a bit of a vetting process. So if somebody's interested in it, email me directly, ronniedoss@me.com. Yeah.
Awesome. We'll put that email address in the show notes too.
Yeah.
Well, cool, dude. I won't keep you forever. We've been going for about 40 minutes already. Anything else on your mind, dude? Is any, like, you're always talking to so many different people, whether that's through your coaching calls, the teams that you are coaching, the business owners and leaders that you're coaching, and or the rooms that you're leading, because you still do a lot of live events, both your own and speaking for the companies, as you mentioned. Anything that you're seeing that, I don't know, maybe you're seeing as a theme pop up that's just made you give something more thought in the last 6 months or a year?
Yeah, I think a lot. Like, obviously, I got a lot going on, in the political climate of our world. There's more. I know so many people that in like groups like yours, we try not to pay too much attention to the news or the mass media and all these different things. But in a world, I would just say, in a world where it seems like things feel dark, when things feel bleak, when it feels like things are tense, that gives you and I an opportunity, as we talked about at the very pretty much beginning of this call. It gives us an opportunity to see what we're going to be about. And we're either going to be about making contribution and shining our light bright and being someone that, if someone crosses our path, that when they leave having crossed our path, they feel better about their life. They feel more inspired to do their life better. They feel more compelled to look at their lives and maybe critique it, not criticize themselves, not beat themselves up, but look and go, hey, there's something about that I'd like to have a little more of, or do a little more of. And we wind up being an example for people. Right now, I believe, as much as ever, people may say that it may have been this way 100 years ago, Kevin. I don't know if it was this way 500 years ago. I don't know. But right now, I think there's as much of a time as ever to be a great example of how to lift people, to encourage people, to cause people to feel good about themselves enough to know that, yeah, maybe they've messed some stuff up, but they can begin again. I think now is the time that we can, when things feel dark, that it's like, this is a time for us to dial it up and say, you know what? I don't care how negative it seems to be out there. I'm not going to focus on that. I'm not looking at all those circumstances. All I'm going to look at is what I can control. And what I can control is what, one, I focus on, and two, what I tell myself about what I focus on. And if I can keep that in as much of control as I can, then I can be a light when stuff gets ugly. I can walk into a room when people are negative, and I can bring something to that room, an energy, a spirit, something to that room that causes the room to be elevated. And that's just, and that's not a money thing. That's not just an abundance thing. That's a contribution a servitude of humility, of honor, of just being grateful to be on the planet. And when we can operate from that, no matter how the circumstances look, when we can operate that as best as possible, we make this whole planet a little better. And that, just to me, that's our job. And so if it's ugly out there, it gives us more of a chance to be somebody that other people can look at and go, yeah, it might be ugly out there, but over here, here's somebody that I can rely on to speak life, to encourage me, to assist me in being better at the things that I know are most important to me. And that's who we're called, created, I believe, to be. And it is ugly at times. There are times if you visit, I don't know if you've ever, like, you go to a restaurant and they got the news on. You go to the airport and the news is on. It's never positive. It's never nothing. You never see anything and you go, I'm really glad I'm watching the news. But it's everywhere we go. And so it's like, if that's it, then if that's their news, I want to be about the good news. And what the good news is we got a chance. If I wake up today, there's a chance. There's a chance I can inspire, encourage, I can enhance the lives of my daughters, my wife, my friends, my network. There's a chance. And that's where I stand. That's where I hope I continue to stand and what I continue to stand for. And I'm not perfect. I'm not even close. I know I'm not going to be perfect, but I know that I can do things that can make a difference. And whether that's reaching out via text, whether it's just sending a phone call, just a quick check-in, just a note, just writing a note, leaving it around for somebody and saying, hey, you know what? You're important and you matter. And if you feel like you're lost in the mix of all these people, I see you and you're important and I appreciate who you are. And I think that if we can do that, Kevin, dude, I think that's about as much as we're going to be able to do. And that's my thought. That's where my heart's at. So, yeah.
It's awesome. It's a good note. We'll end on that. All right. New book is Colossal Considerations. We can get that on Amazon. Put the link to that in the show notes as well. And fellas, if you're looking for a mastermind that's outside of real estate, I'd encourage you to reach out to Ronnie Doss at me.com and see if you might be a fit for Tribe. I think it might just help your life in a massive way. So,
yeah. Man, it's about making connections and doing stuff like this. And, Kevin, sometimes you might feel like nobody hears you. I've been doing this now, 15, 16 years speaking. There've been times where I'm like, man, everybody's applauding, everybody hears me, everybody's paying attention, and everybody's patting me on the back. And then there's other times where it's like, nobody's listening. What are you doing? And if I could just say this, someone told me this about being a dad. There's times where you feel like they're not getting it. But then there's a day or something happens and you realize that seed that you sowed into their heart and their mind, that it took some root and it made a difference and they're growing into something. And so being willing to put yourself out there and make connections and speak up and be a voice like what you're doing and what you and Fred, what you guys do so consistently in serving people, that's what makes you the best of the best, dude. You're at it and you're consistent, you're making connections and you're contributing. And so my hat's off to you, dude. I love you. I love you big time. I consider you a brother. You're a family to me. Any chance I have to spend time with you, see you, laugh with you, it means the world to me. So thanks for having me on here today, man.
Same, brother. Feel the exact same. I love you, dude.
I love you, bud.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week on Next Level Agents podcast. Have a good one.